Hey, Paige.
Hey, you trying to give me a heart attack?
I almost said Nicole. I was like, wait a minute, it's not Nicole.
Okay, I'm changing the presenter.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, sorry, it's been a wild day. All right, we're gonna do this webinar, and yeah.
I'm going to introduce you.
Okay.
What's your name again? JK.
Gary Keller.
This is Gary Keller. Schulman.
I think they'll probably know it's not.
What? All right, 1 minute.
All right. Excited.
90 people are on. I bet like 200 will get on. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to the intro to Marathon Lead Gen and Conversion with your MAPS coach, Richard Schulman. Today's webinar is being recorded. The recording will be automatically sent out to you. So feel free to share that link with anyone in your market center and spread the word about the amazing content that you have been provided with today. If you have any questions, please email us at fasttrack@kw.com. That's FASTTRACK@kw.com. Questions for Richard, you can type those into the questions box in your taskbar in this webinar, and we do appreciate interaction. So as this session goes along, type your questions into there, and we will get to them near the end of the session. Again, you can email us at fasttrack@kw.com, and that's all for me. So, Richard, you can go ahead and get started.
Hey, thank you very much, Paige. Hope you're having a great day in Austin. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the call. I'm really excited to be on here today and talk to us about lead generation and conversion. It's actually a really pressing topic now that we're at the beginning of the year, and I'm actually stepping away from my team's MAD Day, Massive Action Day of calling to jump on here with you. All we're doing for 4 straight days is calling through our entire database. So what I want to do today is I want to talk to you about the main course content that we're going to cover in this class. I want to give you a few direct examples of what we're going to be covering, and hopefully that will inspire you to sign up. We're going to go about 20-25 minutes on the content, and then if you have questions, I'll get to them at the end. There's a questions box on the right. If you ask a question, I'll get back to you. During the course of the class, I will get back to all of the questions during the calls or immediately after the calls. Here we're a little more pressed for time. So let's jump right in. I'm your MAPS coach, Richard Schulman, and this is Marathon Lead Generation and Conversion. This is our 7th time running it. It's been one of the most popular group calls for MAPS. I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of the content that we put out for people, and I really think that we're creating something valuable. My team members are required to listen to it each time we do it to give you a sense of what we do with it. So there's a little about me. I'm in my 12th year, 11 full years so far at KW. This will be my 12th. I've actually capped each year, so I'm quite proud of that as well, too. I do more training and read more books than anyone else that I know on my team or in my office, and I think that's a direct reason for my success. So even though I've sold 1,200 homes, over $600 million, we did $120 million of those sales last year. We did $250 million in sales, $250 million in sales, in about the last 26 months, and I'm really proud of that. So you can see being in real estate 14 years, more than half the sales are coming in the last 4 years of those. That's because the amount of training that I'm engaged in has gone up every year. So last year, I probably spent 2 weeks of the year traveling at out-of-area training events like Family Reunion, which is coming up in February, and our whole team is going. It's a little easier for us being just down the road in Anaheim. Maggie Camp, training in Austin, other regional training. So I really believe in training, not just my group call. All the training materials that KW provides are really valuable in growing my business, and they can grow your business too. I came to KW 11 years ago as a guy who'd sold no more than 10 homes in a year, and now it's a rare month that we sell less than 10 homes. All right, here's a few other things I'm involved in. I won't bore you with the details too much, but I do want to make a point. Is all the other things that I'm involved in. First of all, I've gotten the idea or the ability to buy them through Keller Williams and MAPS coaching. But all the things that you have on there that I'm doing, those are all other businesses, if you will. They're other streams of income that I do have. And they all start with lead generation and conversion. So what I want to make clear that we all understand is that generating and converting leads is the core of not only your real estate sales business, which is what I assume most of you are involved in or primarily involved in, but it's the core of any other business that you have. And keep in mind, if you're running a team or you're managing salespeople, you're also hiring salespeople, presumably hiring people to your team. That's a lead generation and conversion activity too. If you have a separate business, that's a lead generation conversion activity. Getting people into your profit share tree, launching a market center, growing another business outside, or an affiliated business, these are all required lead generation and conversion. So lead generation is very simple, actually. It's just the idea of understanding that every single person that you meet is a lead, right? Everyone you meet either wants to buy a house, has a house to sell, or knows someone who does want to buy or sell a house, right? So once you understand that the entire world, that everyone you touch during the day is a lead, I think it makes it a lot simpler. From there, the trick is generating their information into your database. And then once they're in your database, the trick is converting them to an appointment. So the point of the class overall is to really walk you through step by step. How are we going to meet people, get their contact information, and then set a meeting with them? And that may sound overly simplistic, but we're not doing it to the level that we need to. What Gary talks about is he talks about that our database is our business, and I firmly believe that. I'm in the middle of migrating databases. We have about 32,000 people in our database. And it occurred to me, I really don't need to go out and spend more money on advertising necessarily. I need to go back through my database and find business in there. So we've been hitting our database for the last day and a half, and we've generated a lot of good potential active buyers and sellers through that. So what I want to do is I want to teach you how to grow your database. And then once you have your database, I want to teach you how to convert your database at a higher level, because we're all trying to find new business and we're missing all this business that we already have. So the skills and abilities that you're going to learn will transfer to both, but it's really important to realize that once you have a lead, the process of systematically generating that lead and converting that lead into an appointment is a really crucial skill and activity that we're not hitting on enough. I do have the second MAPS group call, converting appointments to contracts, which I'm sure some of you have taken. That one's also launching after Family Reunion for the second round. That takes you from the meeting to the closing. But this one, we're really hyper-focusing on how do we meet people and then set appointments to meet with them in a real estate business setting. And just by doing that activity, you're going to get an incredible result. I'll tell you that people say, Richard, what's the reason for your success? What are you really good at? What are the things that you do really well? I'll tell you, I'm a mediocre on a listing presentation. I don't sit open houses. I really don't like them. I'm not great at a lot of things. What I'm really good at is purposefully and systematically converting appointments. I'm going on coffee dates with people, which we'll talk about in the class. I'm going on lunch meetings. I'm hosting social events. I'm really good at just knowing that my one thing is to meet people face to face. I'm going to teach you how to do that too. And maybe you guys can teach me how to be a better listing agent. Now, the flip side of all that is that all that stops without lead generation and conversion. The minute that you stop is the minute that your potential lead goes to another agent, right? So we have to understand that this is a long-term activity. So part of being in real estate for 14 years is that my one thing day in, day out has been to wake up, make my calls, set my appointments, go on my appointments, and then follow up. And sometimes that means that you're following up with people for years and years and years that don't buy or sell anything, but they may be sources of leads or they may have future business for you. Okay, So here's the challenge. We're going to cover a lot in the class. So I've given you a quick overview right there. It sounds really simple. I understand that. We're going to go into this in extreme detail and really focus on every little aspect of the entire process. The first thing I want you to do is focus on making a larger volume of outbound contacts, right? The first thing that we do in the class is focus on making a larger volume of contacts to people. So when I talk to new agents who want to get into real estate, and especially if they want to look at joining my team, I tell them as a new agent, you're basically a telemarketer. So I've got 6 agents in the other room making calls on auto dialers right now, and I will teach you how to do that as well, and I recommend that you do the same thing. I want you to understand that the number of calls you make per hour magnifies greatly. So it's the beginning of the year, it's the first week of the year, we have a lot of opportunity to affect our entirety of 2018. If you are sitting down and making phone calls for a scheduled hour, which you need to be time blocking an hour to make phone calls, then you should be making a minimum of 20 outbound dials by using a manual dial. If you're not doing that, we're going to show you how to solve that problem. There's 2 ways. You're either not prepared to make the calls and you're having trouble getting the list to make calls, or you are not condensing your phone calls enough. We'll talk about that later in this actual call. Now, if you're needing numbers to call, we'll give you lots of solutions within the class on how to do it. There's really an unlimited list of numbers to call out there. There's no shortage of people that you can contact, and we'll walk you through that in the first call of Marathon Lead Gen next Friday. So I want to challenge you that really what I'd like my agents to manually dialing, like they're calling their nurturers outside of an automatic dialer, I want them making 20 to 25 purposeful dials per hour and 1.5 appointments per hour. So on 2 hours of calling every day, they should be setting 3 appointments. That will change if you're nurture dialing versus if you're calling hot leads versus if you're circle dialing. That's the standard for this activity that we do. But if you're going to sit down after this call, maybe call your friends and family, wish them a happy new year, ask them what the real estate plans are for this year, you should get $20 to $25 out per hour and do 2 hours of that. So if everyone on the call did that, I guarantee that we'd get lots of appointments and contacts out of it. So that's the first challenge. If you're not hitting that number and that goal, then you need to improve, and I can show you how to do that. Okay, so how do we make the calls? I'll give you a few quick things that we do. I do want to give you some simple value in the class that you see what we're going to be doing for the next 5 hours of webinar training. So the first thing to do, and this sounds really simple, I'm big on bandwidth and mindset. I think that you should be sitting down to a clean desk. You should have no fires to put out. You should really focus that lead gen is your Super Bowl and that you need to get ready to perform. So I handle all my active business before I get into my lead gen. I know some people like to start their day with lead gen, and that's totally fine as well too. And I know that some teams, what they do is they'll have lead gen and they won't allow people to use their email during lead gen time. Either way, I think it's fine, just whatever works for you. Clear off your desk and get your list ready to call, right? You need to have a list of numbers ready to call, otherwise you're not going to hit your call targets. So that can be out of your database, that can be out of your phone book, that can be printed out on a sheet of paper in front of you. It doesn't really matter, but it has to be in front of you so you can call without stopping. What happens is over the hour to 2 hours of calling is your energy level goes down, and if you're wasting time looking for numbers or going on Facebook or chatting with your neighbor, then you're going to lose your energy level. You're not going to hit your full goal. Absolute goal, whether on an auto dialer or not, is don't stop. Every time you stop, it's an enormous waste of time and it's an enormous waste of your energy. It stops your mental focus and your energy, right? It would be like if I stopped right now, hopped on Facebook for a minute, and then tried to come back and regain my enthusiasm for the call. I would just have a total stop. I'd have to restart, and it would be a huge gap. And you guys would all notice that, and your clients will notice that too. Okay, so when you're not stopping, an auto dialer will solve this problem. Being on an auto dialer prevents you from stopping, although obviously most of them have a pause button, so you really have ability to pause there too. I want you to understand that you're time blocking in 1 hour increments or 2 hour increments to be on the phone between 1 and 4 hours a day. It really depends on your business and what you're doing. If you're circle dialing, you're probably looking at 3 hours a day. If you're calling nurturers, you're probably looking at calling 2 hours a day. That depends on you, your team, your business, whatever plan you have. Now, this makes a lot more sense at the beginning of the year. When you're making 25 dials an hour, if you're using a regular dialer versus an auto dialer, which you'll probably double that outbound volume, imagine the outcome difference if you do that for the entire year. Imagine if you're doing 15 now, our average new agent makes about 12 to 15 dials per hour before we train them. Imagine if you're doing 100 dials every 2 hours instead of 12 to 15 dials every hour, right? So it's double. What's going to happen is that's going to create an enormous ripple effect for the entire year because you're going to change your outcome over each phone call session for the entire year. So we can literally double your outbound volume. Now, in the 5th call of this, we have a full 30-minute auto dialer training, and that will help get you squared away on an auto dialer, right? So there's the graphic. The question I want to simply ask you is, if I can show you a way to make 5,000 more dials a year, is that worth your investment of $149 for the class? I think it's a no-brainer because we don't understand that 5,000 more calls is going to yield more escrows, right? There's no way you can't sell more homes if you're making that many more calls a year. Now, keep in mind 2 things. I'm not asking you to do any more work. I'm just asking you to do the work that you're doing better. But that being said, there still is some expectation that you should be making a minimum of 2 hours of outbound calls every day. Okay, what else can we be doing? Call with purpose. Right now, I'm pacing around the room. I have a reputation around the office as someone who is consistently pacing throughout the office. It would probably be better if I stood at my desk, but I really get antsy and I feel like I get my best energy from my phone calls if I'm standing up and walking. It changes my energy level. It changes how people feel me and interpret me over the phone. When they feel my energy and excitement, it allows them to get excited about what I'm doing, what I'm talking about as well. If you're not pumped up, you need to be. So that might be listening to music. That might be having a cup of coffee an hour beforehand. That might be having food or something else that's going to get you going, right? You can't be low energy. You can't be, hi, this is Richard. You want to buy a house, right? We need high energy people because people respond to that. We had a training for our class yesterday. We brought in a coach to do a training for our team yesterday. And one of the important things that she said that I also have been teaching people is that the scripting matters, but not as much as the way that you present it, right? The people on the team who are the best at scripting are not necessarily the best at presenting. The people who are best at presenting, that is the best voice, the best tone, the best energy, the best, energy, enthusiasm, overload. Those are the ones that get the strongest and best results. Okay, why aren't we doing it? And this is something we'll talk a lot about in the class, even though it's not directly related to marathon lead generation conversion. We want to talk about goals and purpose and why. And I put this in the intro call, and we talk about it a lot during the class, because ultimately, I know that making phone calls, January 5th today, you're looking at 51 and a half more weeks of work this year. I know that you're not psyched to make 5,000 more calls, most likely, because we don't have clear goals, right? What's our goal? What's our why? What's our reason? So we're going to talk about this a lot during the class, but the simple thing is that if we're not connected to our goals, it's very easy to have excuses not to make phone calls. Even the top agents on my team, repeatedly, I have to bring them back to their goal and their why to keep them focused on why they're making those dials, right? It's not that much fun to call people at the beginning of the year and call your whole database and say, hey, what's your real estate plan for the year? I get that. I don't love it either. I'm thoroughly connected to my goal and my why, and I know that I have to do these activities so that at the end of the year, I have an actual result from my work, right? So we'll talk about that. There's a lot of ways to tackle this problem. The best way is to have a business plan. Business plan is something that says I want to sell this much real estate, and I'm going to take my end of year sales volume goal, and I'm going to convert that back to a daily activity. So I know that I have to make 17 contacts a day based on my conversion rate to make this much money at the end of the year, right? Something like that. We'll walk through that during the call. I know that it's easy to sort of gloss over that and maybe you lose some focus. Something that's always worked for me is just assigning an arbitrary value to each phone call. I believe, and there's some math behind it I'll go through with you, I believe that every call I make is ultimately worth $100 to me. Every dial I make is ultimately worth $100 because ultimately that will, over time, yield to a certain amount of business. Now, don't get too caught up in the math of it, but I want you to understand that the reason that we're making these phone calls is to sell properties, and you have a certain commission level. So you know that each sale might be worth X number of dollars commission to you, and you can calculate how many dials you have to make. You can calculate your number. I would say for newer agents, the math works out to be somewhere around $25 per dial. So that is that every time you pick up the phone and dial, whether it's a contact or a voicemail or disconnected or whatever, that's ultimately worth $25 to you. if you're doing it well, right? If you're using proper scripts and dialogue, if you're motivated, if you're purposeful about setting appointments, if you're purposeful about converting your appointments and closing your escrows, if you have everything working as a new agent, you should be worth about $25 per dial, and then scale up from there, right? Most of the calls I'm making are to past clients of mine because I have a pretty large past client database. So these are people who are going to either give me a referral or ask me to come sell their current home and buy another home, right? So that's a pretty high value leads I'm calling. And that happens over time. As you progress in your business, you'll start to get more people who are past clients versus new leads. As you're dialing new leads, circle dialing leads, calling expired, FSBOs, whatever database or list that you're calling, new agent worth $25. So when you don't want to hit your last dial or you're thinking about cutting out a calling hour a little early, remember that next dial is worth at least $25 and maybe as much as $100 per dial. Right? Okay, let's talk about the point of a phone call. Now, this is something that we're going to talk a lot about during the class, is one of the ways to get to higher output values is to limit your conversation time on the phone. So we have a rule, we call it the 3-5 rule. Basically, I want you to keep all your phone calls to less than 3 minutes. Now, occasionally you're going to have a listing lead that you talk to or a past client that wants to have a conversation. That's fine. I don't want to debate with you guys or tell you you can never be on the phone more than 3 minutes. I want you to think in your head that the vast majority of calls can be resolved in 3 minutes with the simple line of, I'd love to talk to you more about this. How about we get coffee next week, tomorrow, Wednesday, whatever it is, right? I see you have a lot of questions about X. How about we meet next week for coffee? So we call out the coffee date. We'll talk a lot about the coffee dates during the call. I go to Starbucks a lot. I actually don't really care for coffee all too much, but I end up going there a lot to meet with people. We'll talk about that in depth. But the point of a phone call is to make an appointment. The point of a phone call is not to have an appointment. If you're having a lot of 15 and 20-minute phone calls, you're not doing the right thing. That's better to have that in person and keep the phone calls short. The point of the phone calls is to go through large chunks of data and find interested people to meet with in person. Gary says we need to have 11 meetings a week to hit our goals. That's for me, that's for you, that's for Gary, that's for anyone else in Keller Williams. The standard is 11 face-to-face appointments per week, whether that's a showing, listing appointment, coffee date, whatever it is, 11 face-to-face business meetings per week. Okay, I'm going to go over some scripting to set appointments. We do a lot of scripting in the call. Actually, let me break down a couple slides. I'll break down the call. We do a lot of scripting, and I'll tell you about scripting is I'm not interested in giving you bulk scripts to memorize. You guys can find a million scripts online. What I want to do is I want to teach you how to think about scripting, right? I will give you scripts to memorize. Don't worry. I know some of you panicked when I said that. The point of scripting in my mind, I think people are looking at it the wrong way. I think people are trying to just find like 1,000 scripts to memorize, and it's not right because you know what? You can't memorize them all. I've been doing 14 years. I've probably made more phone calls than almost anyone who's on this call right now. And I can tell you that every day I get an objection or a situation that's not one that I've ever had before that I can't sort of automatically answer. So what I have to do is I have to critically think about how to solve this problem. What I want to do is I want to teach you how to critically think about the mechanics of scripting, right? How do I change my word patterns? How do I change my philosophy and my motivation on the phone to get the results I need, right? And that will help you learn new scripts, and that will help you come up with scripts as you work on it. So a few ideas. One, obviously, you guys have heard of questions control the conversation, but thinking of developing a habit of asking questions on the phone and in person to get better results. And by the way, this works for real estate scripting. This works really well with your kids, and it may work well with your spouse, but there's no promises there. But kids are the best for scripting because they violate all of the traditional rules of conversation, and they really keep you on your toes. So if you have young kids, you can practice on them. But they have no problem breaking your patterns. Okay, so one of the things I want you to work on in your scripting, and we're going to spend 2 full calls on this, is I want you to work on telling people what's going to happen next, right? I don't want you to ask for appointments, right? We still say ask for appointments is a bad habit we have to break. We're going to tell people when it's time to have an appointment. You call someone, hi, this is Richard Schulman from Keller Williams Realty. I hope you had a happy new year. What are your real estate plans for this year? Right, that's your script. You can use that. Go call your whole database today. Use that script. When they say we're thinking about buying a home, you want to have some small talk, and then you want to tell them what's next. Great. I think we should sit down for coffee and talk about your plans this year. Is Saturday or Sunday better for you, right? As soon as they express interest, you want to go for the appointment. When you talk to a buyer, interested buyer appears on your radar. Referral, signed call, open house lead. Great. First speak to the lender and get pre-approved, and then I'll meet with you and we can discuss, and we can tour homes, right? The point of that is to take charge of the interaction. First you get pre-approved, then we'll meet together, and then we'll tour homes. That's the order that we do it in. I'm not going to have a buyer meeting with you until we're pre-approved. I do require my agents and my clients to have a buyer meeting with me, right? If you want to work with the Schulman team as a buyer, you're required to have a buyer meeting with one of our agents. We work with people who sign a buyer-broker agreement. We'll talk about that during the class. First, you have to be pre-approved. I cannot have that meeting until you're pre-approved, right? First, you get pre-approved, then we have a buyer meeting, then we tour homes. That's the process. I'm not asking them, right? This is very simple. I don't want you to gloss over it. It's very simple. But I want you to understand that it has to be done exactly the right way. Because by directing the flow of conversation and instructing the client how to behave, you're going to make everything else easier or unnecessary. For sellers, the best thing for me to do is to come to your home and give you a personalized evaluation. Is Tuesday or Wednesday better, right? I want you to see that you can get this for any situation that you run into, is you can take charge and tell them this is the best thing to do. People are coming to you as the experienced professional in your field, and they want you to tell them what to do, right? Your dentist doesn't say, well, what do you think we should do about this problem here? They say, this is what we're going to do. Or they say, you have two options. They never ask you, what do you think we should do? Do you want to get it treated, right? Does your accountant say, do you want to pay your taxes this year? Or does he say, this is how we're going to pay it? Or here are two ways that we're going to solve this tax problem, right? Any other professional that you deal with acts in this way, we don't. Same for showing, right? This is just a very simple example. So we'll take a look at that house, and then I can show you a couple more right after what time is best, right? As soon as the client expresses interest, we immediately go for the close and set the appointment. We're going to spend a lot of time on this. We're going to go over it. But what I want to show you here is by taking direction of the conversation, you're going to increase your results. If you call 100 leads and say, would you like to see that house on Saturday? Versus, I'll show you the house on Saturday and then a couple more, which time is best? You're going to get a dramatic difference in result with the second one by taking direction of the conversation and directing people where to go. And if you're looking at expanding the results over the entirety of the year, which is something you have the opportunity to do here at the beginning of January, you're going to get an enormous differential in results. I absolutely promise you that. Okay, let me go over the highlights of the class, and then if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. The class starts next Friday. We're going to first work on increasing your outbound call volume. Then we're going to work on increasing the conversion rate. 1-2 step. A lot of the habits that we will talk about building and set you up to build will work on all facets, aspects of your business. I don't want you to work harder, assuming that you're already working a fair amount now. I want to cut out poor lead generation tactics and conversion. I want to stop wasting leads with inadequate follow-up. I want you to realize the leads that you already have are probably more valuable than you realize, and we can improve that. Everything that we do is a mirror of what we do here on the Richard Schulman team. Last year, 2017, we closed $120 million in volume. So I think what we're doing is working. The first call, we're going to talk a lot of generality about how to prepare for calls, how to get ready for the moment of calling, how to schedule yourself. The second call, we're going to talk about the systems of follow-up. When I get a lead, how and when and why do I follow up with that lead? The third call, we're going to talk about buyer meeting. We're going to talk about scripting buyers into meeting with you for either a showing or a buyer meeting to sign a buyer broker agreement. The fourth call, we're going to talk about the same thing but for sellers. On the fifth call, we're going to do a very heavy, in-depth auto dialer training, and we're going to go over mindset, mission values, your business your value proposition for your business, as well as goals, business setting, mindset. Right. So a lot of stuff covered in the fifth call. If you'd like to take the call, we launch on Friday. There's the link to sign up right now. We also will have a sign up link being emailed to you, and you'll get a copy of this video replay right afterwards. It's 5 weekly 1-hour webinars every Friday at 11 Central, 9 Pacific. You'll have playback for all the webinars. I do recommend that you listen to them a second time at least. You'll receive all the written material that you need for the course that you can keep afterwards, obviously, too. And you'll receive access to our private Facebook group where we do a lot of other additional materials are provided for as long as you choose to stay in the Facebook group. It's not timed or restricted. So I'm really excited to have you guys on the call at marathonconversion.com. It'll be starting next Friday, January 12th. And I'd really like to see you there. If you have questions, you can pop in the question box. I think I've answered all the ones that have come through. And, a couple more there. So I'll stay on to answer questions now. There's the link. You can sign up today. Let me see. Let me start getting into the question. Colin asks, you go over online buyer lead conversion in this class? Absolutely. Most of our business starts as online buyer leads or seller leads, and so we are heavily onto that. What I want you to understand is the things that we talk about are applicable across all different aspects of lead generation and conversion, right? So what you learn about online lead generation is roughly the same as what you would do for circle dialing. It's roughly what you would do for meeting people at open house. It's very much core fundamentals of communicating with people to get a better result. Mark asks 25 dials or 25 conversations. So Mark, that's 25 dials per hour on a manual dialer, and it's between 40 and 80 on an auto dialer, depending on if you're using a single or double. If you're cold calling, circle dialing, or prospecting that way, we think you should be up around 100 dials per hour. All of this will be sent out. You'll get a replay of this video in a little bit. It'll come out so you can rewatch it. Holly asks about a time for live answers. There's not a lot of data on it. I would recommend that you call both in the morning and in the afternoon or early evening. I think that you should be building into your schedule to call morning and afternoons. I don't think you should only call in the morning because some people just won't answer the phone. But I don't think there's really strong evidence that one is necessarily better than the other. Dixie asks about accountability. Yes, Dixie, we will stay with an accountability partner through the Facebook group so that you can not only succeed during the class, but after the class as well. All right, and I'm getting a lot of questions, guys, but I will stay on and answer all the questions that we get here today. If you have to hop off, Marathon Conversion is the link to sign up. Maps will send you another link as well to sign up, and we'd love to see you on the call next Friday. Eric asks, I'm an ISA on the team. What do you consider to be regular numbers for an all-star ISA? It's complicated, Eric, because different ISAs are calling different pools. You could be calling past clients. You could be circle dialing listings or FSBOs and expires. I think that the standard would be based on nurtures per hour, and I would expect you to get 8 to 10 contacts or nurtures per hour generally as an ISA, although that will definitely vary depending on the types of pools that you're calling. Yeah, Michael asked about where to find leads. Yeah, the first call we'll talk about sources of actual people to meet and generate into calls, numbers to call. So we'll cover that in depth on the first call, and it's pretty simple. So auto dialer, we're changing auto dialers to Commissions Inc. So I will be providing information on that. I think what's really important to understand is that the database and dialer use is not as important as actually using it. Right? Don't get caught up in that. Get caught up in actually executing on it properly. Tanya, I didn't understand your question. Could you resend it? Is a conversion piece on conversation to appointments or an appointment to contracts? We would track both conversion numbers, but let me know if that's not what you were looking for. Yeah, Tawanda asked about finding lead telephone numbers. We use Cole Realty Resource to buy leads. So that's not a problem, but let me know if that answers your question, and we'll go over that a lot in the first call. Daniel, the Facebook group is Marathon Lead Gen and Conversion, but it's only open to you if you are a member of the class. Colin, yes, we've just migrated to Syncs. We're in the middle of doing that now. Yeah, Deidre asked, yeah, this class is great if you're not using an auto dialer. The only thing that won't help you is going to be the last 30 minutes of call 5. Where we talk about auto dialers, although I do strongly recommend getting an auto dialer, even if you share it with another agent in your office. I think it will provide a lot of value to you overall. But everything on the class works except for the last half of the 5th call, which is the auto dialer training. All right, I think that's all the questions, guys. I really appreciate you being on the call. Listen, sign up for the call, marathonconversion.com. And we'll be excited to have you on there. Otherwise, let me know if I can answer any other questions or if you have any questions regarding the class or conversion. I'm going to go back and call through my database today. I recommend that you guys do the same thing as well. A couple more questions came in. Tanya asks about ISA. So I want to make really clear that I'm trying to teach you really basic foundational things at an extremely high level. So I've had a lot of ISAs from teams on here. It's 100% applicable to ISAs because this is all that you're doing. But keep in mind that anyone else who wants to do what you're doing, which is calling people and setting appointments or generating nurtures, which is all of us, are going to learn the same thing, right? So the next call I have, Marathon Lead Gen 2, which we call converting appointments to contracts, that call is geared for people who are going out and meeting with people. So if you're an ISA, call Class 2, converting appointments to contracts, which is a separate MAPS group call, would not be useful for you. This is just a promotional webinar, Mickey. So the actual webinars will be Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. Yeah, Candace, all the calls are recorded, and you'll be able to get video webinar of all the calls. Mark, if you're calling 25 people per hour, I think you should set 1.5 appointments. Right, so you should be getting, that number of people face-to-face. If you're circle dialing, it's going to be nurture dials, and it's probably more like 8 to 10 per hour. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Love to see you there next Friday. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out through the MAPS email that'll be coming out to you in a little bit. Thanks for your time.